For years, I stayed silent in classrooms, at interviews, and even at family gatherings, just because I was afraid of speaking English. I thought I wasn't smart enough. I thought people would laugh. But one moment changed everything. And today, I'm sharing the real story of how I went from fear to fluency. What you'll discover in this video. This video isn't about someone else's success. It's about you and the fear that's been holding you back. Why do millions of smart people stay silent in English conversations? What's the real reason you understand English but still can't speak it fluently? Is there a simple way to build confidence without joining expensive courses? If you've ever thought, I know the words, but I can't speak, people will laugh at my English. What if I make a mistake and freeze? Then you need to see this, because by the end, you'll learn the mindset shift that breaks fear instantly. The daily habit fluent speakers use that no one talks about, and a powerful secret that might just change how you speak English forever. Stay with me, because the answers you're looking for are finally here. You know, it's funny. People think fear is about heights or darkness, but for some of us, fear wears a different face. Mine was English, not the language itself, but the moment I had to speak it out loud. When I was a child, I remember sitting in my classroom, silently praying that the teacher wouldn't call my name. My heart would race every time she said, "Next student, read this paragraph." And when it was finally my turn, my hands would shake. My voice? Gone. And even if I tried, the words just didn't come out right. I wasn't dumb. I wasn't lazy. I was scared. Scared of being laughed at. Scared of hearing someone say, "Your English is so bad." Scared of making a mistake. And that fear? It followed me everywhere. I avoided class presentations, even faked being sick to skip school on those days. In group discussions, I stayed quiet. At birthday parties or weddings, when someone spoke to me in English, I'd just smile or nod and pray they didn't ask me anything else. Even when I understood what they were saying, I couldn't reply. Not because I didn't know the words, but because I didn't trust myself to say them right. And you know what hurts the most? When your friends laugh, not because they're cruel, but because they don't understand what it feels like. They don't know the shame that comes when people giggle after you mispronounce a simple word. They don't know how you go home, lie in bed, and replay the whole thing in your head over and over. I remember one time, in high school, during an English reading session, the teacher asked me to stand up and read a short passage. I froze. I could read it in my mind perfectly, but when I opened my mouth, nothing, just silence. And then the class laughed. Some covered their mouths, some didn't. The teacher moved on, but that moment, it stayed with me for years. From that day, I told myself, never again. Never again would I let myself be that embarrassed. But instead of fighting the fear, I started running from it. No more volunteering, no debates, no interviews unless I had to. When friends practiced English, I stayed quiet or left the room. And slowly, it started affecting my life in ways I didn't expect. In college, I lost confidence in group projects. I knew the answers, but I let others speak. At job interviews, I had the qualifications, but not the words. I remember walking out of one interview room with tears in my eyes, not because I didn't know the job, but because I couldn't explain what I knew in English. Even in relationships, I stayed in my shell. While others joked and chatted freely, I sat quietly, afraid of sounding foolish. People thought I was shy. But the truth was, I was trapped inside a language I never felt free in. I even avoided traveling. When my friends planned trips, I made excuses. Because what if I had to ask for directions or talk to someone at the airport? It's hard to explain how deep this fear can go. You feel small, powerless, like you're living only half a life. And yet, nobody talks about this. They say, just practice. They say, don't be shy. But they don't understand that for some of us, English isn't just a subject, it's a wall between who we are and who we want to be. I spent years behind that wall, but one day something changed, and I'll tell you what happened. But one day something changed. It wasn't a big event. No stage, no spotlight, no motivational speaker. It was just a small moment. But sometimes that's all it takes. I was sitting in a cafe with a few classmates. They were discussing something for an assignment, and then one of them turned to me and said, "You're always so quiet. Don't you have ideas?" I froze for a second. The truth was, I had plenty of ideas. I had even done most of the research, but I just smiled awkwardly and said, "Etsac English well." And then she said something that I never forgot. She looked at me and said, "How will you ever improve if you never try?" She didn't say it in a rude way. She wasn't mocking me. She was just honest. And in that one sentence, something shifted inside me. That night, I sat alone in my room and thought about it. I remembered all the times I'd run away, all the chances I let go of, not because I wasn't capable, but because I was afraid. And that night, I made a decision: no more running. Even if I stuttered, even if I messed up, even if people laughed again, I had to face it. I didn't suddenly wake up fluent the next day. No, it was slow and messy. I started by reading one paragraph out loud every morning, not in front of anyone, just alone with a mirror. At first, I couldn't even look at myself. But slowly, my voice became less shaky. I practiced every day, even when it felt useless. Then I did something scary. I started replying to messages in English, just short ones. "Thank you." "Yes, I'll do it." "Sounds good." My fingers trembled every time I hit send. But no one laughed. No one corrected me. Most didn't even notice. Next, I started speaking small sentences with friends who were supportive. Simple things like, "I think this idea can work," or "What's the deadline for this project?" Sometimes I made mistakes. Sometimes I forgot words. And sometimes I felt stupid. But every time I spoke, the fear got smaller. I found videos online, not grammar lessons, real conversations. I watched people talk. I listened to how they said things, and then I tried copying them. In my room while walking, in front of the mirror, I practiced like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. My future was behind that fear, and if I didn't break it, I would stay stuck forever. One day, in college, we had a group presentation. Normally, I would have begged someone else to speak, but this time, I raised my hand. People were surprised. Even I was surprised. I practiced the night before again and again. My heart was beating so fast when I stood in front of the class, but I took a deep breath and spoke. Was it perfect? Number I forgot one sentence. I mispronounced two words, but when I finished, people clapped, and one of the professors said, "You explained that really well." That was the first time in my life I felt proud after speaking English. Not because I was perfect, but because I was brave. After that, things began to change. Slowly, my confidence grew. I started participating more. I started answering calls in English. I started writing more, reading more, listening more. And one day, something even crazier happened. I gave a short speech at an event. Me, the same person who once faked being sick to avoid speaking. As I stood there with the mic in my hand, I wasn't thinking about grammar. I wasn't thinking about making mistakes. I was just speaking because the fear was no longer in control. And let me tell you something. If you've ever felt like you're not good enough, if you've ever stayed silent while others spoke confidently, if you've ever felt like English is this big mountain you can't climb, I promise you, you are not alone. And more importantly, you're not stuck. Because fear is not permanent. It only stays powerful if we keep feeding it. And every time you choose silence over speech, you're giving it strength. But the moment you try, even with broken sentences, even with hesitation, you start taking that power back. I started seeing it like this. English wasn't my enemy. It was just a tool I hadn't learned to use yet, like riding a bicycle. At first, you fall, then you wobble. But if you keep going, you ride. And one day, you forget that falling was even part of the process. The same thing happened with me. I used to be afraid of introducing myself. Now, I speak to strangers in English without thinking twice. I used to avoid phone calls. Now, I answer them calmly, even if I have to pause and think sometimes. I used to feel small in meetings. Now, I ask questions, give suggestions, and sometimes I even lead. But let me be honest, it didn't happen in a month. It took time. There were bad days when I wanted to quit, days when I still felt like that scared kid in class. But the difference was, I didn't quit because now I had seen what was possible, and something beautiful began to happen. People stopped noticing my grammar and started listening to my ideas because confidence is more powerful than perfection. Read that again. Confidence is more powerful than perfection. You don't need to sound like a native speaker. You don't need a fancy accent. You just need to believe in your voice. And if your voice is shaking today, that's okay. Use it anyway. If you mispronounce something, laugh, learn, and move on. If someone corrects you, thank them and keep going. If you freeze, take a breath and start again. Because every single person who speaks English fluently today once couldn't. We all started with the alphabet. We all made mistakes. We all said he go instead of he goes. We all had that moment of embarrassment, but those who kept going, they became fluent. And now, so can you. Let me tell you something that helped me a lot. Fluency is not just about speaking fast. It's about being comfortable with your words, even if they're slow, even if they're simple. It's about being able to say what's in your heart, clearly, honestly, and without fear. That's real fluency. And that's what I built, step by step. No expensive courses, no foreign trips, just consistent effort, self-belief, and a decision. I will not let English control my life anymore. I know you might be thinking, but I've tried, and it's still hard. Yes, it is hard, but so is staying silent your whole life. So is living with regret. So is watching opportunities pass you by just because of a language. So choose your hard. One keeps you stuck, the other sets you free. And if you're wondering where to begin, start small. Speak to yourself in English while getting ready. Describe your day out loud. Write your thoughts in a notebook. Record yourself reading and play it back. Use tools like ChatGPT to practice conversation without fear. You don't need to wait for the perfect time. There is no perfect time. There's only now, and now is enough. Every time you try, you grow. Every word you speak is progress. And one day, you'll look back and wonder why you ever doubted yourself. And I know how lonely it feels when you're in a room full of people and still feel like no one hears you. Not because you're silent by choice, but because your voice is locked behind fear. You watch people talk effortlessly. They joke, they explain, they impress, and you wonder, how are they so free? You try to speak, but your brain starts racing. What if I say it wrong? What if they laugh? What if I get stuck in the middle of the sentence and everyone is staring at me? So instead, you stay quiet. You fake a smile. You nod. You act like you're okay. But deep down, you're not. You're frustrated, not with others, with yourself, because you know you're capable. You know your thoughts have value. You just can't find the words to match them. I remember one day, I was in a room with a team of people. They were brainstorming ideas for a project. I had one, something simple, creative, and effective, but I didn't speak. I told myself, maybe someone else will say it better. And they did. Someone said almost the same idea, and everyone clapped. That day, I went home and cried, not because they stole the idea, but because I gave it away. I gave it away to fear. And that's what fear does. It steals things from you. Opportunities, respect, joy, even your own voice. But here's the thing. Fear only wins when we stay quiet. You don't beat fear by waiting. You beat it by moving through it, one sentence at a time, one uncomfortable moment at a time. I started challenging myself in small ways. When someone said, "Hi" in English, I replied. When I didn't understand something, I stopped pretending and started asking, "Can you explain?" When I made mistakes, I stopped apologizing and started learning. And slowly, people changed too. They stopped seeing me as the quiet one. They started respecting me for trying, because effort is powerful, honesty is powerful, and believe it or not, people respect courage more than perfection. I remember once I was part of a panel discussion. I was the last speaker. My hands were sweating. I took the mic, looked at the audience, and said, "Before I begin, let me say, I'm still learning English, so if I make a mistake, smile with me, not at me." People laughed, in a good way. They nodded, they smiled, and I gave my speech. And when it was over, someone came up to me and said, "That was the most real talk I've heard all day." That moment healed something in me because I realized I don't need to be perfect to be powerful. I just need to be real, to be me, without fear. And I want to ask you something now. What have you lost because of your fear of English? An interview? A job? A friend? A relationship? Or just your self belief? It's okay. I've lost all those too. But we don't have to keep losing. There comes a time in your life when you must decide, am I going to let this fear decide my future? Or am I finally going to say, enough? And when you do, everything starts changing. You begin to speak, you mess up, but you laugh instead of hide. You forget words, but you don't give up. You feel embarrassed, but you don't run away. Because now you're not afraid of failing. You're only afraid of not trying. So today, I want to leave you with this. Your fear doesn't define you. Your past silence doesn't limit your future. And your English? It's not a weakness. It's just a skill, one you can build step by step. Pause. If this story felt like your story, then don't stop here. In the description below, I've added a full step-by-step video series to help you go from fear to fluency, just like I did. These are not boring grammar lessons. These are real methods, real tools, and real daily habits that actually work. Check them out. Start with the first video. And remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to begin. Your journey starts now. Pause. On screen text. See description, step by step video list.